The bustling diner was alive with the clinking of dishes, the hum of conversation, and the sizzle of breakfast orders from the kitchen. Amid the organized chaos was Harper, a young waitress with a warm smile and a kind heart. She had a knack for making even the grumpiest regulars crack a smile and prided herself on giving every customer her best. But this morning felt different. As Harper carried a tray of steaming pancakes past the window, something caught her eye, a small golden retriever puppy sitting near the curb. His fur was muddy, his ribs faintly visible beneath his coat, and his big, pleading eyes scanned the passers-by, looking for food or even a scrap of attention. Harper paused, her heart aching for the little creature. The puppy wasn't barking or begging, he just sat quietly, staring longingly at the plates of food being carried inside. A soft whine escaped his lips as he sniffed the air. "Poor thing," Harper whispered under her breath, her fingers tightening around the tray. She knew stray dogs weren't uncommon in the area, but something about this pup struck a chord deep within her. He looked abandoned, yet hopeful. Setting the tray down, Harper turned to her manager, Mr. Connor. "Hey, do you think I could—" "No," he interrupted sharply, barely glancing up from his clipboard. "Don't even think about it, Harper. We're not feeding strays." Harper bit her lip, frustration bubbling inside her. The diner threw away food every day. What harm would one meal do? Moments later, as she passed by the counter, she made a decision. Harper grabbed a plate of scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast left uneaten by a customer. She wrapped it quickly, adding a small cup of water, and headed out the door. The puppy flinched as she approached but didn't run. "Hey, little guy," Harper said softly, crouching down. "Are you hungry? Here, this is for you." The golden retriever tilted his head, hesitant but curious. Slowly, he sniffed the food before devouring it with a hunger that broke Harper's heart. She stroked his head gently, whispering, "You're not alone anymore." Unbeknownst to Harper, her act of kindness had been witnessed, and her life was about to change forever. As she stood to go back inside, she noticed a sleek black SUV parked across the street. The windows were tinted, but she could feel someone watching her. Before she could think too much about it, Mr. Connor's voice boomed from the doorway. "Harper, what do you think you're doing?" She turned to see him storming toward her, his face red with anger. "You were just feeding a stray dog," he interrupted, his voice sharp enough to draw the attention of customers inside. "I told you not to do that. How many times do I have to remind you that this is a business, not a charity?" Harper's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she glanced over at the customers who were now peering through the window, whispering among themselves. "Mr. Connor? It was just a plate of leftover food," she argued, trying to keep her voice calm. "We throw so much away every day, and this little guy clearly needed it." Mr. Connor shook his head, his expression cold. "And what happens when he comes back tomorrow? And the next day? We'll have strays all over the place. It's bad for business. If the health inspector sees this, we could get fined." Harper's heart sank as she glanced at the puppy, who was now sitting quietly, his ears drooping as if he could sense the tension. "But, no buts!" Connor snapped. "You're fired, Harper. You can collect your things and go." The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. "Fired?" she repeated, stunned. "For feeding a dog?" "Yes," Connor said coldly, "for disobeying my orders and embarrassing this establishment." He turned on his heel, heading back inside. "And don't let me catch you here again." Harper stood frozen, her mind reeling. Customers stared at her through the glass, some sympathetic, others indifferent. Fired. Just like that. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Instead, she crouched back down beside the puppy, forcing a smile for his sake. "It's okay, buddy," she whispered. "It's not your fault." The golden retriever leaned against her, as if offering comfort, and Harper ran her hand through his soft, matted fur. "What do I do now?" she murmured, mostly to herself. She had bills to pay, rent due at the end of the month, and now no job to rely on, all for an act of kindness that felt so small. yet so significant. The puppy licked her hand softly, wagging his tail as if trying to reassure her. Despite everything, Harper felt a flicker of hope, like the little dog was telling her that things would somehow be okay. Just then, the soft hum of an approaching car caught her attention. A sleek black SUV pulled up in front of the diner, the engine purring as it came to a stop. Harper frowned, shielding her eyes against the glare of the afternoon sun. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out, a tall figure in a tailored suit, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. "Excuse me, miss," the man said, his voice calm and authoritative as he approached. "Are you the one who fed this dog?" Harper hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Yes, I am," she admitted carefully. "Why?" The man studied her for a moment, his sharp gaze softening as it flicked to the puppy at her feet. Then, much to her surprise, he smiled. "I've been looking for this dog," he said. Harper blinked, her heart racing as the man in the tailored suit crouched down beside the golden retriever puppy. The dog's tail wagged faintly, and he sniffed the man's hand before nuzzling it gently. "I've been looking for this dog," the man repeated, his voice warm but firm. "He belongs to someone very important to me." Harper's mind spun with questions, but before she could ask, the man stood and extended his hand. "My name is Andrew Dawson. And you are?" "Harper," she said, shaking his hand. Her voice trembled slightly, still reeling from being fired moments ago. Andrew's gaze softened as he looked at the puppy. "This little one's name is Scout. He's my daughter Lily's best friend. She's been heartbroken since he disappeared." Harper's chest tightened. "I'm so glad he's safe," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Andrew nodded, his expression grateful. "You have no idea how much this means to us. Lily hasn't smiled in weeks, but when we brought Scout home last night, she lit up like the sun." Harper felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't expected her small act of kindness to have such a big impact. Andrew reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek leather wallet. "You've done something incredible today," he said, handing her a business card. "I'd like to offer you something in return. Come by this address tomorrow morning. I think I have an opportunity you'll be interested in." Harper stared at the card, her fingers trembling slightly. The address was for the Evergreen Animal Rescue Foundation, a name she recognized instantly. It was one of the most prominent organizations in the city, known for rescuing and rehabilitating animals. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Say yes," Andrew said with a knowing smile. "Good people deserve good things." With that, he led Scout to the SUV and opened the door. The golden retriever paused, looking back at Harper with those same soulful eyes. She waved softly. "Goodbye, buddy. Take care of yourself." The puppy barked once, a happy, grateful sound, as if promising that this wasn't really goodbye. As the SUV drove off, Harper stood there for a long moment, staring at the business card in her hand. Fired or not, she couldn't shake the feeling that something incredible had just begun. The next morning, Harper stood in front of the address printed on the business card, her heart pounding in her chest as she looked up at the sleek, modern building. The sign on the door read, "Evergreen Animal Rescue Foundation." She took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and stepped inside. The reception area was clean and bright, with photos of rescued animals lining the walls. A friendly receptionist smiled up at her. "Good morning. Can I help you?" Yes," Harper said. "I'm Harper. I was invited here by—" Before she could finish, a familiar voice called out, "Ah, Harper, you came." She turned to see Andrew Dawson approaching, now dressed more casually but still exuding authority. He smiled warmly. "I'm glad you made it," he said. Harper smiled faintly. "Thank you. I wasn't sure what to expect." "Come with me," Andrew said, gesturing toward a hallway. "I owe you a proper introduction. My family runs this foundation. Yesterday you helped save more than just a dog. You gave a little girl her happiness back." Harper followed him, her curiosity growing. "The golden retriever, Scout, he really means that much to her?" Andrew nodded. his expression softening. My daughter Lily has been struggling since her mother passed away last year. Scout is more than just a pet. He's her comfort, her best friend. When he ran off after getting scared during a thunderstorm, we searched everywhere. Lily hasn't slept well in days. But last night, when we brought Scout home, I saw her smile for the first time in weeks. Harper's heart swelled. The thought that her small act of kindness had made such an impact was overwhelming. I'm so glad Scout is back where he belongs, she said. Andrew stopped in front of a large window overlooking a spacious play area filled with happy, bouncing dogs. Harper, he said, people like you are rare. Most would have ignored a stray. You stepped in when no one else did. He turned to face her. Our foundation could use someone like you, someone with heart. I want to offer you a job here at Evergreen. Harper froze. A job? Yes, Andrew replied. We rescue animals, rehabilitate them, and find them loving homes. It's hard work, but it's meaningful. And with your compassion, I think you'd be perfect for it. Harper was speechless. The last 24 hours had felt like a whirlwind, fired for feeding a stray dog one day, and now being offered a position at a respected animal rescue. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Say yes, Andrew said with a smile. You'll start part-time, and if it's a good fit, we'll make it full-time. Sound fair? Harper hesitated, her mind racing. The thought of working with animals, of being part of something bigger, made her heart flutter with excitement. Yes, she said finally, a grin spreading across her face. I'd love that. Andrew clapped his hands together. Great. Let me give you a quick tour. As Harper followed Andrew down the hallway, she felt a tug on her pant leg. She looked down to see a scruffy terrier mix named Tucker staring up at her with hopeful eyes. Harper's first few days at the Evergreen Animal Rescue Foundation were a whirlwind of new experiences. She quickly bonded with the animals, especially Tucker, the scruffy terrier mix who had claimed a special place in her heart. The work was hard, but fulfilling, and for the first time in weeks, Harper felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. But the peace didn't last long. One morning, as Harper arrived at the shelter, she noticed something odd. The front gate was slightly ajar, and there were muddy footprints leading up to the door. Her heart skipped a beat as she stepped inside, calling out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" The shelter was eerily quiet, the usual chorus of barks and yips replaced by an unsettling silence. Harper's eyes darted around the room, and that's when she saw it, a note taped to the reception desk. "Back off! This isn't over!" Her hands trembled as she read the words. Grady. It had to be him. Andrew arrived shortly after, his face darkening as he read the note. "This has to stop," he said, his voice tight with anger. "We can't let him intimidate us." Harper nodded, but her stomach churned with unease. Grady wasn't just lashing out, he was escalating. Over the next few days, the threats continued. Harper found another note tucked under her car windshield, and one evening, as she was closing up the shelter, she heard the sound of glass breaking. She rushed outside to find one of the windows shattered, a rock lying on the ground nearby. "We need to do something," Harper said, her voice shaking as she showed Andrew the damage. "He's not going to stop." Andrew clenched his fists. "You're right. We need to expose him. If we can gather enough evidence, we can shut down his operation for good." Harper's mind raced. She thought back to the diner, to the way Grady had treated the strays that wandered near his property. There had to be more to his story, something they could use against him. That night, Harper stayed late at the shelter, researching online. She stumbled across a private forum where local animal rescue advocates shared warnings about unethical breeders. There, buried in a long thread, she found a name she recognized: Grady's Kennels. The posts were damning. One described a litter of puppies that had been sold with severe illnesses. Another recounted how a customer had discovered the rescued dogs they'd bought were actually stolen pets. Harper's stomach churned as she read. "Andrew," she called, waving him over to the computer screen. "Look at this. There's a pattern here." Andrew scanned the posts, his jaw tightening. "This is it. We need to bring this to the police and the local news." Harper hesitated. What if he finds out it's us? We don't have enough yet to take him down completely. Andrew rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Then we'll keep looking until we do. Harper, the truth has a way of surfacing, but someone has to be brave enough to dig it out. Harper nodded, emboldened by his words. Tucker, who was curled up beside her feet, let out a soft bark as if offering his own encouragement. That weekend, Harper decided to visit the outskirts of town where Grady's kennels were rumored to be located. She drove cautiously along the dirt road, her hands gripping the steering wheel as Tucker sat in the passenger seat, watching the world outside with quiet alertness. The kennels were tucked behind a chain-link fence, partially obscured by overgrown trees. From a distance, Harper could see rows of small, makeshift enclosures, some covered in tattered tarps. The faint sound of barking dogs reached her ears, and her heart ached at the thought of animals suffering under Grady's care. She parked a safe distance away and pulled out her phone, snapping a few photos through the zoom lens. As she focused on one of the enclosures, she spotted movement. A man stepping out of a small office building. Grady. Harper ducked lower in her seat, holding her breath as Grady scanned the area. For a moment, she thought he might have seen her, but then he turned and walked back inside. Exhaling slowly, Harper whispered to Tucker, "We'll get them out of there. I promise." As Harper drove away, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A low, chilling voice crackled through the line. "You don't know when to quit, do you?"